Good evening. This is Making the Case. I'm Yodit Tewolde. It's week 3 and day 8 of R. Kelly's sex trafficking trial. Today we heard from witnesses with many of the same accusations that Kelly was manipulative, controlling, and he also leveraged his superstar status to take advantage of those hoping to make it big in the music industry. However, this time, one of those accounts came from a man. BNC's Astrid Martinez is in Brooklyn following today's developments.
And during Monday's testimony, for the first time, we heard from a man in R. Kelly's sex trafficking case who claims that the R&B singer sexually abused him when he was underage. We also heard from a fourth female accuser who said that R. Kelly raped her backstage at a concert in Miami in 1992 after the singer allegedly had married Aaliyah just 2 days prior. We heard for the first time from a man who says he's a victim in R. Kelly's sex trafficking case. Lewis, as he's being referred to, told the jury he was just 17 years old when R. Kelly lured him to his Chicago area home with false hopes of helping his music career. The two met in 2006 when Lewis was a senior in high school, working at a McDonald's drive-thru in Chicago. The singer gave Lewis his phone number. Lewis said his mother eventually called Kelly, hoping the R&B star could help her son become a rapper. Kelly then invited the family to a party at his Chicago mansion. Lewis testified he and Kelly took a picture together at the party, and Kelly whispered he should come to the house next time alone. Lewis started going to the artist's music studio to record and to get feedback. Lewis told jurors on one occasion Kelly crawled up to him and began performing sexual acts on him. Lewis said he felt uncomfortable, and Kelly asked to keep the acts a secret. Lewis also told of a time Kelly snapped his fingers and a young naked lady crawled out from underneath a boxing ring in Kelly's garage, and she performed sexual acts on both of them. Lewis said he kept seeing Kelly because he wanted to make it in the music industry, and even brought friends to the parties, including a 16-year-old boy who he said began having sexual encounters with Kelly. It's unclear how long Lewis and Kelly's sexual relationship lasted, but they were in contact until 2018. Lewis is now 32 years old. On Monday, we also heard from a fourth woman who said she was just 17 years old when she met R. Kelly at a concert. When she told Kelly she was an aspiring artist and her age, she said the singer had his associates clear out the dressing room and began playing a game called Who Could Kiss Better. Kelly then got more aggressive, unzipped her clothes, raped her without a condom. Robert Kelly has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Now, during cross-examination, R. Kelly's attorneys questioned Addie on why it took her more than 2 decades to come forward with these allegations. Allie said she was scared to be victim-shamed and humiliated. In Brooklyn, I'm Astrid Martinez for BNC.
Now let's take a deeper dive into day 8's testimony. Joining me tonight is veteran prosecutor and BNC's legal contributor Paul Henderson, who's also been following the trial from the very start. Hey, Paul.
Hey, how's it going, Yodit? Good to see you.
All right, so Paul, we heard from 2 accusers today, including the first male accuser who testified under the name Lewis. Now, what stood out about his testimony for you?
Well, several things, and I think we were just talking about it in the introduction when they were talking about the victims that were testifying being scared and ashamed. And this is something that's common when we have sexual assault cases, especially when you have young people that have been sexually abused. There's this whole element, and with Lewis, where we're talking about homosexual behavior, that doesn't necessarily mean that either party is actually a homosexual, but they've engaged in this behavior. Sexual assault like this is typically about power and control. And hopefully they're going to have a psychologist on at some point to explain all of that to the jury that may be confused as to why R. Kelly was acting in the way that he did. But when we have victims like this that are testifying, there's all of these other things that they bring into the courtroom while they're testifying, including an embarrassment or being afraid about talking about acts that they may have engaged in that were homosexual, that were forced upon them, or that they didn't stop or deny. And that includes behavior that may be inappropriate, like drinking or using drugs. And oftentimes this is part of what people will do that are predators to try and cover up their actions and make it fearful for their victims to come forward. Things like implied consent because they didn't testify or protest or tell their parents or authorities when it happens. And these are some of the justifications as to why you see testimony so many years later. And that's all of what I was thinking about while I was listening and hearing what Lewis was saying when he was talking about the behavior, in answer to the unasked questions from the audiences and jury as to why he didn't stop it, why he didn't say something earlier. That's part of the cycle of abuse that a predator builds in cases like this. And the takeaway from that is that Lewis's testimony, in addition to the other victim, is again showing consistencies about R. Kelly as a predator, showing consistencies as to his behavior for being behind, orchestrating, and ultimately benefiting from the sexual abuse that he was setting up for many of these young victims that we're hearing from over and over and over again, Yodit.
Well, there was an interesting observation made in the New York Times about Kelly, who's been especially expressionless through most of the trial, is that this time he seemed agitated by Lewis's testimony, shaking his head and folding his hands while he was speaking. What do you make of his demeanor, and what could it mean to the jury?
Well, I think that he's doing that to make sure that the jury sees and knows that he's opposed to this testimony, that he doesn't agree. And even when and though his defense counsel isn't objecting on his behalf, he's making it clear to an audience that either this didn't happen or the circumstances weren't as they seemed, and that he doesn't agree or go along with whatever they're saying. And to me, the fact that it's coming now while we're hearing the homosexual behavior in regards to Lewis's testimony, I think is very telling about how he's reacting. But interestingly enough, that's not the ultimate reaction from his attorneys who are representing him and stopping the testimony over and over and fighting detail after detail with these victims, which we talked about before, would be a bad idea in a case like this, where you re-victimize the people that are testifying and you look bad in front of a jury that is likely believing testimony, especially when it's compounded like this after so many other consistent testimonies that they've heard over the past week.
Let's talk more about what the male accuser said on the stand. He testified that Kelly asked him what he was willing to do to advance his music career. Now, many of these accusers have accounts that start with their career aspirations. This plays right into the prosecution's theory, right? That Kelly used his fame to prey on these individuals, especially those who wanted a music career. But could that also give the defense an open to discredit their accounts?
Well, only if they're able to show that Lewis and these other victims were acting as fans and independently, and that they wanted to do these things versus R. Kelly forcing them to do those things. And let me qualify that by saying, even if they did, it's still statutory rape. It's still illegal behavior because of the age. But I think what they're laying a foundation for to make an argument about is challenging the power differential based on the authority of a celebrity trying to influence someone's career, and even the age differential of trying to influence someone who is so much younger than you. Their real only pathway is to try and identify all of these victims as fans and not victims. I think that is a hard argument to make given the testimony, but there's really not much left for them to pursue at this point in time. If I were on that defense team, I would have been expecting them to focus on some of the smaller details in the story, to ask them about questions that may have happened 10, 15, 20 years ago that they may have forgotten, to show that this may be undermining their recollections rather than trying to directly attack them about what their memories are regarding the sexual abuse, which I think is a harder road to hoe, and then coming back to recast them as fans, to ask them questions like, and were you a fan of R. Kelly? Were you trying to meet him? Was there anything that you would have been willing to do to get in his presence? Questions like that to try and show, at least as a foundation, before they even begin their case, that this person was a fan, that this person knew who R. Kelly was, that they were trying to be in his presence for whatever reason, and then to try and twist that into their own independent behavior. It's a difficult argument to make, but it's the only one that I see them being able to make, given the testimony so far and given the charges that he's facing, which will mean there are still more victims to come with consistent testimony as to what we've already heard.
All right, Paul. Now, these witnesses are telling very similar stories, and the defense is being pretty consistent in their plan of attack on cross. Why can that be a dangerous game to play for the defense?
It's dangerous because the jury is hearing story after story, and they're connecting their own dots as to the consistency of these stories and why they're relevant. And it's painting R. Kelly as a predator, and it's showing both how he set up the abuse and how he benefited as a result of the abuse. That's a big hill to overcome, given the testimony that's coming in, victim after victim after victim, that has so many consistencies as to how R. Kelly demanded that he interact with them and how R. Kelly mandated that they participate in these abuses. And some of the B-roll where we were showing some of the images from the courtroom, I thought was really interesting when they showed Mr. Lewis pointing his arm, and there's a part, there it is right there, and there's a part of every testimony like this where the victims have to identify who the person was that abused them. They have to point out the person that committed these crimes that the prosecution is asking them. And those are the types of memories that are going to stand out in this jury's mind before they even hear the argument from the defense team, that I think is going to be a real difficult argument to make. So this person's lying, this person was lying, this person is mistaken, this person is a fan, and what about all the rest of them? So just everybody is lying about these things that are consistent, and they didn't know each other, they didn't plan this together, and they all are coming forward now with no benefit years after the incidents happened, and that's not true. That's a very difficult argument to make for this defense team, and I believe that the evidence is coming in purposefully and intentionally, well crafted by a well-seasoned prosecutorial team that is painting R. Kelly as a predator and likely to be found guilty based on the evidence and the testimony that we've heard so far, Yodit.
Now, there was a piece in the USA Today talking about the importance of this trial to the Black community. In it, the executive director of the D.C. Rape Crisis Center is quoted saying, "This case is so powerful because it puts center stage the sexual violence that Black women and girls experience every day." Now, we're far from a verdict, Paul, but why is even acknowledging these accusers, their testimony, and their trauma significant?
Well, for two reasons. One, because we're going back so far with cases that can't be held criminally liable for statute of limitations restrictions. And yet, even with those restrictions, because of how this case is charged at a federal level, every single one of those victims is having a day in court. Every single one of those victims is going to be collaborated with victim witness services. Every single one of those victims is going to be a part of the accountability for what R. Kelly did to them based on this verdict, and have their story told and their truth be known to a broad audience. And I think that that's going to go a long way. The second issue that I think is absolutely relevant is that we are talking about communities of color, victims of color here, and they rarely get this type of attention. They rarely get this focus in our criminal justice system, and they rarely get this level of priority for such an important case as they are in the R. Kelly case. And I think it's perfectly appropriate and almost expected that we would hear from victim and witness advocates throughout this country celebrating how this prosecution was put together and celebrating how these victims are given accountability and a response from our criminal justice system for their abuse and their victimization, even though it happened so long in the past, especially because it speaks to ignored problems from our criminal justice system for victims like this in communities of color. That's why it's important.
All right, veteran prosecutor and BNC legal contributor Paul Henderson, thank you so much for the brilliant insight, but we're going to see you a little later in the hour.